Assalamualaikum and salam sejahtera to our beloved lecturer, Dr. Moniza Hasra, and our friends. We are from Group 1, and today we will present about case study 1, which is slavery in the chocolate industry.
On this farm, we find Abdul. He's survived 3 years of work. He's just 10. He earns no wages for his work, he says, just food, the occasional tip from the owner, and the torn clothes on his back. Put in the simplest of terms, Abdul is a child slave. We move away from the group so he can speak more freely, and through our translator, he tells us his story.
If he had a choice, he wouldn't work.
Abdul says he's from neighboring Burkina Faso. When his father died, he says, a stranger brought him to Ivory Coast. Abdul has never eaten chocolate. Tells us he doesn't even know what cocoa is for. We met Yaku on the same farm, also from Burkina Faso. My mother brought me when my father died, he tells me. Yaku insists he's 16, but he looks much younger. His legs bear machete scars from hours clearing the bush. The emotional scars seem much deeper. I wish I could just go to school, he says, to learn to read and write. But Yaku says he's never spent a day in school.
And before we start presentation, I will introduce my group members. Okay, for the first presenter is Cha Wai Ting, the second presenter is K Kai Wei, and third presenter is Aziz Shafiza Venturazali, and fourth presenter is Fu Hu Wen, and the next presenter is Aina Zaira binti Zainal Abidin, and the next is Lau Tin Ying, and for the last presenter is Nurul Hazika binti Shahrul Niza.
For starting this case study, I will talk about the summary in this topic. Slavery in the chocolate industry case is about the cocoa beans found on farms in Africa, especially the Ivory Coast, which make up close to half of the world's chocolate. However, during the crisis period of cocoa beans prices, Ivory Coast farmers chose to use slavery in order to cut their labor costs. Therefore, we will discuss the various ethical issues raised by this case, whether the slavery is viewed as absolutely wrong or relatively wrong, and who shares in the moral responsibility for the slavery occurring in the chocolate industry. Question 1. What are the systemic, corporate, and individual ethical issues raised by this case? There are three forms of ethics problem are specifically illustrated in the case slavery in the chocolate industry. A. Systemic issue. B. Corporate issues. And C. Individual issues. Systemic issues in business ethics are ethical questions raised about the economic, political, legal, and other institutions within which business operate. Two main systemic issues: economic system and legal aspects. Example for economic system. Farmers in the Ivory Coast try to cut their labor costs as much as possible by turning to slavery in order to survive during the crisis period of cocoa beans prices. Example for legal aspect. Slavery is considered an unethical and immoral phenomenon in the Ivory Coast, but it appears to be a major issue due to poor law enforcement. Next, corporate issues. Corporate issues are questions about the morality raised about a specific company. Middlemen. who go to Ivory Coast farms and buy cocoa beans from farmers at very low prices, then market them to chocolate manufacturers. Four largest chocolate makers in the United States: Hershey, Food Corps, M&M Mars, Nestle USA, Kraft Foods. These chocolate manufacturers keep using the tainted cocoa beans harvested from the farms use slave children. After Representative Eliot Engel, the members of the Chocolate Manufacturers Association and the World Cocoa Foundation established a system of certification to identify that the cocoa beans they uses not come from the farms which use slave boys. Next, individual issues. Individual issues in business ethics are ethical questions raised about a particular individual or particular individuals within a company and their behaviors and decisions. The key contributors to the individual in this case is farmers and consumers. Farmers use child slavery labor because they force children to work unwillingly and slavery is totally illegal in Ivory Coast. Customers who are aware of the problem but continue to buy their products and purchase tainted chocolate made from cocoa beans obtained in the Ivory Coast will be disappointed indirectly lead to the continuation of slavery in the chocolate industry. That's all from me. Thank you.
I'm going to discuss about question 2. Is the kind of child slavery discussed in this case absolutely wrong no matter what, or is it only relative wrong? For example, if one happens to live in a society like ours that disapproves of child slavery, I hold the view that every cultural moral standards are different. In one society, it might be considered unethical, but other culture will say it's appropriate. Another is the issue of child slavery. Described in this case is right or wrong, depending on which culture is standing. It may be valid in society that recognize slavery and might be wrong in a society that fully disagree with slavery. Next, this case claims that the slavery in the Ivory Coast is illegal. It means the use of child labor for slaves is completely wrong, regardless of what is disapproved of slavery in the Ivory Coast or in other countries. I would say that the moral question is violation of slave labor, in particular of children aged between 11 to 16. Children are abducted and trafficked to the cocoa farmers. They are forced to work long hours a day without being credited for their hard work. That's all from my views. So I will now hand over to the next presenter, Aziz.
The majority of them tutor on the daily basis, such as do not attend school and are placed in solitary confinement if they attempt to flee. Despite the fact that slavery is illegal, it continues to exist in secret, especially in the countries where the poverty is prevalent, such as the Ivory Coast. In conclusion, slavery is unethical. The problem is execrable when slave children in Ivory Coast farm are severely abused. Children or the younger generation society may not be used for hard physical labor in dangerous environment, such as the cleaning the ropes and grading the beans. Individual gets the right to obtain the education from the communities, institutions, and society in order to contribute the improvement prosperity of their regions.
I will present about the question 3 with my team member Aina. Question 3 there is, who share in the moral responsibility for the slavery occurring in the chocolate industry? Moral responsibility is a main consideration of ethics and is considered vital of understanding moral responsibility. A person who is morally responsible will bound for anything that happens, no matter good or bad things, a consequence of something accordance with one's moral obligation, and to identify who should take responsibility of the mistake in order to fix or compensate because it is the most important sense of moral responsibility. In the case of slavery in the chocolate industry, there is more than one group in the chocolate industry that should share moral responsibility for the unsafe labor force. This party consists of government, farmers, chocolate industry, reporter, and the consumer. In fact, these parties are able to prevent the occurrence of several cases, but they ignore it. They keep doing so because it will bring benefit to them, which is lower cost can bring big benefit although they are immoral. Next, one of these parties is farmers. In this case, cocoa farmers use unsafe children labor and abuse them in dangerous working conditions on cocoa farms. The farmers prohibit them to attend to school. The children also forced to work out to 12 hours per day with a heavy workload and lock them in solitary confinement after finish the work. Besides, consumer is also one of these parties. They are one of the parties that contribute to this moral responsibility but based on their buying behavior on chocolate. If the consumer know the chocolate producer will use tender cocoa beans in their manufacturing process and still buy chocolate from them, then consumers are to some extent morally responsible for the slavery system in the chocolate industry, which indirectly leads to the continuation of this moral issue. That's all for my part. I will pass to next presenter. Thank you.
Next, I will continue about the moral responsibility for slavery in the chocolate industry. And government is the organization has biggest part for responsible to this moral responsibility who know about the problem in enforcing, controlling and monitoring the laws like the labor policy. In this case, the African government is holding a large amount of responsibility for their continuing action and sometimes support these farmers. They also seem to be covering up bribery by excluding the media. And the next one is middlemen and chocolate manufacturer are also responsibility who continue to purchase from these farmers, some of which are in close to each other, even after it has been proven that they are trafficking children. The reason why they are the most responsible is since they can afford to pay these farmers much higher wages and provide some oversight at this plantation that could help prevent this trafficking of children. Both of them acknowledge the fact that cocoa farms use the slave labor, but they ignore it to keep conducting their business. For instance, the middlemen absolutely know this issue is because they are the one who go to the farm and to buy the cocoa bean with the extremely lower price compared to the current market price in order to grind and process them, then sell to the chocolate company. Furthermore, the chocolate companies such as Hershey, M&M's, and Nestle are aware of this moral issue, still continue to use tainted cocoa bean from the Ivory Coast for their chocolate production instead of preventing it. They also signed the agreement to establish a system of certification that could verify and certify that the cocoa bean they use are not produced using child slavery. The agreement was called a Hierarchy Angel Protocol. A few organizations and journalists also responsibility by exposing the widespread use of child labor and in some cases trafficking on Ivory Coast farm. Many people are not aware information about
other children are sold to traffickers and farmers owners by their own relatives who are unaware of the dangerous work environment and the lack of any provision for an education. Most of the children never get paid by working at cocoa farm. Since then, the industry has become more secretive, making it impossible for reporters not only to gain access to farm where human rights violence continue to exist, but also to disseminate this information to the public. Sometimes it's hard for them to exposing slavery and government corruption in the cocoa sector. Based on the past case, Ivorian government authorities detained 3 newspaper journalists after they published an article exposing about the government corruption in the cocoa sector. That's all from me. Now I will pass to the Lao Ti and Hasika for the question 4.
For the questions 4, what does this incident shows about the view that to be ethical, it is enough for business people to follow the law? In this statement shows that if a businessman follow the law, then they are ethical. In many cases, reveal that although people run their business in compliance with the law, they are still judged and criticized for unethical behavior. Let's look at the case of slavery in the chocolate industry. The U.S. chocolate manufacturers were no problems as they complied with rules. In fact, Representative Eliot and Senators Hawkins attempted to enact the slave-free labeling system into a law, which guaranteed not to have been produced by slave children. Before passed on measures becoming a law, that is a must approved by both of the House of Representatives and the Senate. However, the bill was never approved by the Senate and never became a law. It is because U.S. chocolate manufacturers' lobbying efforts to fight the slave-free labeling system, we've argued that a labeling system would not only hurt their own selves, but in the long run could hurt poor African cocoa farmers because their sales decreased, cocoa price dropped, and this would increase the pressures that lead them to use slave labors in the first place. From here, reveal that even though rules were followed by all parties, the actions of the U.S. chocolate manufacturers were perceived as unethical.
Hi, I'm Zika, and I will continue to present my points just to add some views and my findings about question 4. From what my previous group member had presented, I highlighted the last phrase of the question. To be ethical, it is enough for business people to follow the law. The incident in the case of slavery in the chocolate industry show that the United States chocolate manufacturers are aware of the problem of slavery in the industry, but they continue to neglect it. Maybe they feel that they have followed the laws of the business without committing serious wrongdoing. Another factor that this company continue their way into the tainted chocolate candies are they feel difficult to set aside profits in order to implement the slave-free labeling scheme or to avoid using tainted cocoa beans. Moreover, if they had to implement the labeling system, it would reduce their income and incur additional costs for them, such as cost of establishing and operating the slave-free labeling scheme, and also the cost of fighting slavery in the chocolate industry. So, the conclusion is, in the case of slavery in the chocolate industry, in our opinion, that was based on social norms that fight for human rights. We will easily judge that each individual, corporate, or system involved in the aspect of enslavement of laborers, especially children, are unethical. This is because of the facts that they are not following the principle of humanity and responsibility to the weak ones, such as children. The misery of the enslaved children will not be resolved without corroboration from all the parties who share a moral responsibility to oppose slavery in any form. So, that's all from me and my group members. Thank you.